Dylan asked a great question that I think might apply a bit more to me, but I'm curious your thoughts. You've been on all sides of this as well. Any tips on forecasting the timeline of projects? Mixing is a longer one. Mixing has a much more linear timeline, which makes it easier to schedule. Writing, production can vary widely. How do you deal with this as a producer balancing multiple projects? Do you have just generally from the mixing side, I assume it's fairly easy to say, I can get this done at this time, but sometimes maybe you miss deadlines. Do you give yourself a little more time when telling people when things are going to be back? Obviously, there's last minute projects. Do you have a general...
I've never missed a deadline by it being my fault, ever. It's always like a missed file. And if someone says, can you get it done by this? And I say yes, then the agreement is shaken upon, whether verbally or physically, and it will get done in that time. So don't bite off more than you can chew. Take it from me. I bite off a lot, but I'm an eater. You know, I chew, and I'm a survivor, and I've survived this long, and I'm going to continue to do that based on my reputation of one, being pretty quick, unless I'm on a vacation or something. You know, other than that, I'm here to get things done for you in the shortest amount of time, because I understand what it means to be excited and have anticipation from the start in the room to the end of the day, bounce all the way to the final mix, right? That's and the master, but that's my bread and butter. That's what I'm stoked about. Like, how do we guide people through from the beginning to the end of the process? That's the producer's job. I take that on equally as important once it's in my hands to finish the master with Dale or whoever. But the producer's hand is to guide and hold the hand of the artist and the label and the manager through, right? I'm sure you can attest to that. That's your job. Yeah. And I love that as well. I'm not a producer in that sense anymore, but I would love that responsibility to executive produce and mix something one day, or have someone say like, hey, can you give final comments on the productions, along with the label, whether that's an A&R position or just a, consulting position by friend, ask, just to have a once over before we mix the record. Like, that's my dream. That's what I would like to do when I get older, I guess I would say.
Well, so, and it's a good answer on the mix side. That's why people like Jon get hired. And I've talked about this with people like Serban and other folks I've worked with. The reliability, consistency, delivering when they say they're going to deliver is a big part of why mix engineers get hired. From the producer-writer standpoint, to Dylan's question, it is difficult. I mean, I work on a project with an artist. I, was with an artist out in London for a week, and we're going to do 3 songs. And the immediate question is, when can I hear things by? And there's no way to know exactly what that is. I try to be very communicative. I've certainly, quote unquote, missed deadlines when I say, like, it's a Tuesday, I'll get it to you the following Friday, we'll have roughs. But I always say I should have them by the end of next week. And then as I'm going through them, I'll sometimes just give some communication to say, here's where I'm at. I'm getting close. If it becomes Wednesday of next week and I go, I'm going to need a couple more days, I'm going to get it to you over the weekend, then I should probably deliver it over the weekend. But yeah, writing and producing, the expectations, it's really important to manage them. And it's hard to give an exact answer for something like, if you're writing songs with somebody, you can't just be like, hey, we have nothing today, we're going to write songs tomorrow, and we'll have the single by Friday. It's just incredibly difficult to predict that perfectly. But the way you mitigate that is by having consistent communication. Say, hey, we had a great day today, we got a good idea, we still need to do a little work, we're going to try to cut some vocals, or we didn't really get anything today, but we're digging into whatever it is. Like, if you can have that communication with the team as the producer, as the person who is really, like you said, the producer in the old school sense, not just the person making the track, but the person who is tasked with the responsibility of being the adult in the creative process, who's going to report back to the label or the management or whatever. Communication is a huge part of that. And I actually, back to what we were saying before, that's what really separates the people who can make good sounding stuff from the people who get hired over and over. I get hired a lot where they go, hey, can you do this in the next 48 hours? And I go, yes. And then I get it done. So if that's the case, I always get it done. So it's a range. I think it's a range of expectations. It's a range of things, but communication, and when you say you're going to do something better, then we'll do it.
I think there's 2 contexts to tease out in what you're saying, just briefly, which would be, if you're writing with different people throughout a week or a month, or if you're locked in with someone for weeks or a month, right? So if you're a producer and you're making an album with an artist and you have a month lockout to see what happens in that month, you obviously have more time to work on a song to get it to completion, where the artist is like, oh, well, we wrote 3 songs this week. Now let's take next week to finish this one song because this is the best song of the 3 that we wrote last week. Let's finish this as a single or a contender, right? So there's a different context that's a little bit more, the expectations are different. You're not allowed to go work with anybody else because you're locked in with them for a week. So therefore, you're not going to have this expectation from 3 other artists, hey, where's my song, when you're writing with other artists at the same time. Now, that context is also very common with producers. When I was producing in the room, that's a conversation I was always having with a new producer, which is, not only be writing and producing for 2 or 3 days a week and finishing the records on the other 2 or 3 days of the week.
That's how I work.
You know, and that's how I imagine you work. So I wanted to just specify the 2 different contexts of what we're talking about. Otherwise, I completely agree. I think that that's what gives the spice of life is communication on all fronts in order to make everybody happy and everybody feel like their priorities based on parameters that you've set for your creative freedom to also exist, right? That everybody wins that way. But communication is the only way that works.
Yeah, and I will say one other thing. The end of Dylan's question was, how do you deal with this as a producer balancing multiple projects? And like you said, if you're locked in with somebody, it's much easier to say, cool, we're going to work for 3 weeks, then give me a week to finish productions and I'll get demos the following week or something like that. When you're working on lots of different things at once, that juggling, again, I think is what makes a lot of successful people successful, is they are able to successfully juggle those projects, manage the expectations. And by the way, of course, all the personalities are going to be different from project to project, both the artist, the A&R, whatever your collaborators are, whoever the stakeholders are, whoever the other writers are. And so each project has to be managed a little bit differently. And again, I think that is the real skill of a producer in the old school sense, is the person that no matter what the personality is of the project or what the type of project is or what the timelines are, whatever, they're the person that folks rely on to, they just go, are we good? And the person goes, yeah, we're good. It's going to be like this and this and this. Really just like being the adult in the project. So that's the sort of meta skill that I think is the most important.
Thanks for watching. Just a reminder, all of this content is free. There's no secret knowledge here. There's no Patreon. We don't read ads. We don't have sponsors. We're just trying to build a knowledge base. All that we ask in return is that you share it with somebody. Thanks so much.